feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Dom and Chris here. Before we begin, as always, we're recording down here at Engel Studio, so please come on down here for all your audio needs here in Tucson, Arizona, and make sure you subscribe, like, and follow all our socials for future episodes and updates on the podcast. And Chris, we're back on the ice.
That's right. We're talking about just a fantastic all-around center. We're talking about Peter Forsberg.
Peter Forsberg.
We dabbled talking about him in a previous episode, and it made me go all the way back. So it was
Talked about him in like 2 episodes.
But the first one was so long ago. It made me think of that. I was just like, oh man, that was 2 years ago.
Almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, literally, yes.
Thanks, COVID.
Peter Forsberg, though.
Peter Matthias Forsberg, born July 20th, 1973, in Örnsköldsvik, Sweden. These are not going to be pretty here, so we're not Swedish, you know. I mean, if the Swedes know how to do 3 things, it's produce hot women.
Here we go.
Produce shoddy furniture, and play hockey awesomely.
Do meatballs that will make Dom angry.
Yes, the meatballs that will make Dom angry. That's number 4. Mm-hmm. Son of Kent Forsberg, a former hockey coach for Modo Hockey and the Swedish national team. And hockey was pretty much this guy's life from day one.
I was just going to say, you kind of see this with the coach's son in this, because that was like the big team in their city and that kind of stuff. And he really, I mean, is exactly what you think of a coach's son, which is like the biggest team player.
Yep.
And just does everything that you don't see necessarily on the stat sheet. I remember somebody saying that. I was just like, oh, yeah, he back checks everything.
Oh, he played defense.
Yes.
He was not afraid to play defense, and we'll talk about that later and kind of how he changes the perception of many ignorant Canadians who dislike
the Geese.
Yeah, the Geese, yeah.
Ooh.
Who dislike players over there from Europe.
Very much.
Growing up, he played with actually former NHLer who was pretty damn good, Marcus Naslund.
They were friends like their whole life. I saw that they actually came back together after the retirement.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They were born actually 10 days apart, and they played with and against each other growing up. He played for the regional Angerman Land. They called it Angerman Land.
I know.
It's so good.
Again, Swedes.
It's like Candyland for anger.
And they were like, was that a mistranslation? They're like, no.
We are angry.
Yes. Hoober durber.
Derper angry. He made the All-Star team for the under 16
They're not going to like that one.
Not going to like that one. And led them to a championship in 1988. He was on that team with Naslund.
Yep.
And actually, Naslund's mom and Forsberg's dad worked at the same electrical company in Sweden. So, I mean, I think it's a country with like fewer people than New York City, though.
Yes.
So, I mean,
this is
so cold.
A small hockey city that it's probably even like a town. So,
but you know, you think about it though, like in America, like say in Texas, like the high school football coach, his son always ends up playing quarterback.
Yep.
Like that's, you know, I bet in Sweden it's the same thing, just with hockey.
Yeah, seriously.
It's the same exact thing. In 1990, he debuted in juniors for Modo Hockey, one of the teams his dad coached.
And he crushed.
Yes, he did. He just destroyed. Just absolutely destroyed at that point. And he's only 17 years old.
Yep. So he's straight up a kid. This is before, or this is like right when all of the NHL teams are looking at these kids like, oh, we can draft them right now.
Yeah.
And like we were just saying, in juniors, he just lights it up so much. He had 102 points.
Yep.
In 39 games.
Yeah. Which is insane. And then they chip him to the senior team, and he has 7 points in 23 games.
Yep.
17 points in 23 games. And much like a guy we'll bring up later, and we've brought up in past podcasts, like Eric Lindros, he's kind of a bigger guy.
Yes.
Willing to throw his weight around.
Bigger. Yeah, I was just going to say, and that was not looked at as the European style at that time.
Nope.
And he definitely was an enforcer center where he literally played defense, offense. You know what I mean?
He was just a dog, ready for anything.
Seriously.
And that's kind of what makes him so popular. For,
Definitely.
NHL
for hockey
teams.
fans, my God,
dude, in Denver, he can do no wrong.
No, seriously.
Like, I mean, he's just the man. So at the end of the 1991 season, we were just talking about the 1991 NHL entry draft, he's drafted 6th overall by the Philadelphia Flyers,
which was super surprising.
Mm-hmm.
He was very young. I guess what everybody thought was he was going to be an early second rounder. He might sneak into the first round.
Yeah, the Hockey News had him as the 25th overall ranked prospect, which is like that fringe, where you go.
And to jump that much, 20 spots essentially, and almost get into the top 10, almost top 5, everybody was like, what the hell are the Flyers thinking? And then this
pressure. I did want to bring up.
Go ahead.
I did want to bring up Philadelphia's international scouts loved him.
Yes.
And I feel like every other team's international scouts loved him, particularly probably in that teens area of the draft too, where I don't think he would have dropped much further. But the NHL at the time, as far as scouting, they're probably not looking at these guys as closely as they need to be. But even drafting 6th overall, those Philly fans booing him over it because we've done episodes on this time and again.
Oh, those Philly fans.
Throwing hoagies at the Flyers front office. The Flyers have a plan, as you said, in place.
Well, because who they really want is who goes number 1 overall, and then Eric Lindros.
Watch that episode or listen to that episode.
And to their credit, Eric Lindros, Hall of Fame, there's nothing wrong with that player.
No.
What they give up for him turns out to be absolutely ridiculous.
It's almost devastating. And what's interesting is the linchpin, and I've seen interviews with the Nordiques former owner talking about how all of his scouts said, we will trade you the rights to Eric Lindros, but without Peter Forsberg, we are not. And all the stuff that they got, which we'll discuss, that wasn't enough to make this trade go through without Peter Forsberg. And mind you, up to this point, the Nords are so bad, but they've accumulated so much talent from drafting first and second for half a decade. This is a huge win for them.
It is really ridiculous because they almost get they almost fill in all the pieces they need. They get 2 first-round draft picks coming up. Do you have the list of what they get?
So
it is so ridiculous.
It's 5 players, one of which was Mike Ricci, who played a huge role on one of the teams we'll talk about later. One of the first-round picks was Jocelyn Thibault, who played for Quebec, but was flipped later for Patrick Waugh.
Yep. When they went to Colorado.
As we'll discuss later. But yeah, 5 players, 2 first-round picks, and $15 million in United States money.
And $15 million on top. It's just there's
Imagine how much that is in Quebec City.
So much maple syrup.
So he spends his next 3 seasons, though, after, being drafted by the Flyers, having his rights traded to Quebec, in Modo, and just absolutely starts lighting it up for that senior team.
Which is not crazy. He's still young, still developing, and
he put up 119 points at his age 20 season against grown men who we'll later talk about in his international career.
I was just going to say he was quoted as, or people were saying, he's literally the greatest player not in the NHL.
Yeah.
And that was the tag that he had for that last 2 years. They were just when is he coming to the NHL?
And if you're the Nordiques, you're just watching his tape like Homer with the Venus de Milo, oh, precious Venus. No, we got Joe Sakic on our team. Just bring him over.
Yeah, seriously.
93, he won the Gold Pucken for Player of the Year and also the MVP of the Elite Syrian, I guess is their hockey, their NHL. In 94, he won both awards again, and they also made their first final as a franchise that year in 1994. In, I think, 19 years or something like that? It was something crazy.
And they lost.
Well, they lost to Malmo. They blew a 2-0 in a 5-game series lead, and Forsberg scored the OT winner in Game 2, and Game 5 was quite Peter had some comments about the officiating in Game 5.
He had some pretty strong words. Do you have his quote?
I have his quote about the referee, Boris Johan. I'm sorry, these names aren't right. Yell at me in the comments. Because he was obviously favoring the other team, Malmo.
Yep.
And the amount of power plays they were getting after losing 3-1. He said, "He is so fucking bad. He is so fucking bad. I would give him a hit," which sounds like Ivan Drago's "I Must Break You."
Oh, it's so ridiculous. But he also said, too, he wasn't like, he said it was extremely lenient. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, it was extremely harsh in the beginning, so they were getting all kinds of penalties. And then when they tried to flip it and then they started to play more aggressive, that's when he let stuff go kind of more tolerant. You know what I mean? And that's what he said. He was just like, it was just horrible refereeing.
I'm going to say this about Forsberg. He's a dude who had only one fight in his entire NHL career.
Love that stat.
Which we'll talk about, and we've done an episode on it, actually. But only one fight in his whole pro career. He was the quietest guy ever. I think it had to be that egregious that it would piss him off this much to say anything.
Because I don't think he was saying like he was paid off or like he favored them. He was like literally like it was the worst refereeing ever. Like it was just horrible from start to finish. You're just like, yeah, I mean, I almost believe him when he says it. You're just like, God.
It's like the Dale Gribble. She did her best, which was crappy. So he's already like the man in Sweden.
Yes.
In 1994. But in 1994, in the summer, he elects to go to the NHL. So he finally signs on with the Nords in actually October 93 for a 4-year, $6.5 million deal. Unfortunately, in 94-95, there's the lockout.
Yep.
The NHL has their lockout, so he can't go to Quebec until they start the season. Which they eventually do on January 21st, 1995, against those Flyers.
I did like that. The team that drafted him, and he gets what he is almost known for, which is an assist and just like a good showing. You know what I mean? So that's the...
He's like Swedish John Stockton, only way bigger.
Yep.
And then 6 days later, he gets his first goal at Buffalo, and he joins a very young and up-and-coming team in Quebec. And in the 47 games he plays, he has 15 goals and 35 assists. That's 50 points. He's a points machine.
Yes, he
out
really
the
is.
gate. Especially
Especially with the assists on the lines that he gets on when we see them eventually come the Avalanche and all that. You just see like 80 assists a year. You're just like, Jesus.
Well, they're open, and one of whom's a Hall of Famer. Why wouldn't I pass it if he's... He was second in the team in scoring behind Joe Sakic.
Yep.
They win the Northeast Division that year. Second best record in the league. I mean, from the end of the Good Friday Massacre really up until now, it is just like, hello, darkness, my old friend. But they've ascended with all this talent.
Seriously. And I bet if you're a Nordiques fan, you're like, oh, here we go.
Oh,
you know,
here we go.
And I know we've talked about it, but you're just like the feeling of like, do you believe all this young talent we have?
You guys believe in angels?
Yep. No? All right.
Unfortunately, they lose in the first round to defending Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers.
Yep.
But that year, Forsberg, which I think is so amazing about this dude, he was as good as advertised since he came in the league.
Yes.
He wins the Calder Trophy, which is Rookie of the Year, and was named to the NHL All-Rookie team. And you're thinking, oh man, those French Canadians, they're gonna get that first cup in front of those Habs.
Seriously though, it really, the look of this team, and we'll talk about it right now, because they end up just not being a franchise anymore.
Well, they're still a franchise. They just decided to pack their bags for warmer weather.
Yeah.
So July 1st, 1995, Nord's owner Marcelo Bou sells Quebec, and ComSat Entertainment in Denver decides, hey, we've been out of hockey since the old Colorado Rockies in the late 70s, early 80s. We need a team. And on August 10th, 1995, the Colorado Avalanche are born with just the same. Granted, they'll make more improvements throughout this year, which we may touch on, we might not, but
Yes, they do make some great moves as soon as they move over, but the core group of guys that come, that's the thing that everyone's talking about.
You have to be like a former Nords fan, like really?
Yes.
Because it's not like an expansion team that just comes out of nowhere.
No, it's like literally
you were taken from us.
I did like this little fact that Peter Forsberg actually scored the last goal ever for the Nords against the Rangers. I thought that was a nice one in that loss in the playoffs, but still, it's one of those little spider webs
I love that spider web.
that we love. And I'll tell you, if anything is to rub salt into the fucking Quebecs, into their wounds, is how the Avalanche perform in this first season.
Dude, I remember this first season. It was
bringing in Patrick Waugh,
awesome,
and it solidifies.
They trade
this team.
Owen Nolan, a former first pick, for Sandis Ozolinch on the defensive end, which was a huge boost. I mean, everything they basically did turned to gold this year with an already stacked roster. So they get the number 2 seed in the West. Why? Because Forsberg scores 116 points, 86 assists for a center.
30 goals, which is still amazing.
Which is amazing, but 86 assists?
Which is just, it's so absolutely insane. Yeah.
So he ends up netting 21 more points in the postseason. More goals, 10 goals, 11 assists. Yep. They roll through Vancouver in 6. They roll through Chicago in 6. And then we get to the Red Wings series. I won't go into too much and just listen to that episode. Lots of fights, but the Avalanche take down the President's Cup trophy, and they get the Stanley Cup finals against the Florida Panthers. And in Game 2, Forsberg becomes the 6th player in NHL history to score 3 or more goals in one period. This was a super overmatched series, though.
Yes, this was one where everyone was saying the West was so much more dominant.
My
than
heart's
the East.
forever broken. The pen should have been in it. Damn you, Florida Panthers.
Interesting, yeah.
I wish I wouldn't have. I'm glad it didn't happen. I'd had to go to school in Penguins gear. So it's not good.
It's not good for Dom. Grew up in Colorado, so it's just not good for his health.
No. So they win in a sweep. They win 4-0, and he's the Stanley Cup champion in his second season. But I did want to bring this up because his career is all a little like Eric Davis's. This was the only single time he played at least all of his team's games in a single regular season.
Well, it's the way he plays.
He plays hard.
He plays hard, and he plays through. When you look at it, all the injuries that he's like, well, he played through that injury. The ones that actually take him out, you're just like, oh yeah, those have to be debilitating. Like
the ones that keep him out for extended periods, those are career enders for a lot of guys.
Yes, seriously.
96, 97.
Yep.
Bruised thigh, so only 65 games. Still 86 points.
Yep.
They win the President's Trophy that year, best record in the NHL. And this, as I brought up before, March 16th, 1997, gets in his only fight ever against the Red Wings because I think everyone got in a fight that night.
And I think it was 10 days before their famous one.
Yeah.
But literally they were fighting so much. That's what everybody was saying. It was just like, yeah, this was a famous one. That the goalies came, all of that kind of shit. Watch that episode. But this was one, and somebody said this. They were like, that one was amazing. But Peter Forsberg fought one time, and it was in this game. It wasn't in the other game. I'm telling you, this is how much these two teams hated each other.
Oh, God. So they bruised through the playoffs, but they end up losing in the Western Conference Finals to Detroit that year. But now he's an NHL star. He's on the cover of EA Sports NHL 98. Like, he's a marketable dude and the co-number 1 player on the best team in hockey.
Yes.
Which is crazy to think. Like, thought of as a low first-round pick, coming out of Sweden where, players from that area were not looked at as particularly tough by their North American counterparts.
And he was definitely the guy, especially being this huge star, that changed that whole perspective and throughout his whole career, he gets banged up. Not how we get banged up.
No.
He gets he gets injuries and shit, but he really is this with Sakic, even with like Waugh, where it was like these like stars that were like on this team that were for like a decade.
Yeah, pretty much. They sailed it through for about a decade before they had to go through that terrible rebuilding process.
Yes.
Next 2 seasons, plays in 150 games, 55 goals, 133 assists.
He is literally the assist champ. I can't deny it.
Oh my God. I mean, now he's like your marquee star in a hockey crazed market. Unfortunately, both years they lose in 7 in the first round to the Oilers in 98, and then they lose in 7 to the Stars in the Western Conference Finals in 99.
I was going to say, those two, I feel like they were almost unlucky. Maybe not the Stars, but yeah.
The Oilers one, I remember watching that. It was just bizarre. It was like one of those hockey upsets where you're just like, well, that just happened.
Yep.
Like, that just happened. Unfortunately, before the 99-2000 season started, he has shoulder surgery. So he's playing with a bum shoulder this whole time, misses the first 23 games, then misses an extra 10 for a concussion, shoulder, and hip pointer issues.
I was just going to say, he has all these injuries where this might have stopped somebody or at least slowed down their production. And he later on has one of his best years. But like, he has so many injuries in the next couple of years that you'd be like, oh yeah, so many guys would have retired.
He's getting in car accidents, essentially.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, like,
seriously.
Not like brutal
Not
car on fire, but like
yeah.
Not fender bender either. Averages over a point a game that year, which is just, with all of these injuries, he shouldn't even be playing. 2000, 2001, misses 8 games with a rib injury. He does play in 73 this year, and this is, yeah, I mean, this was a really good team. I mean, this was kind of like, all right, now we got Detroit. Now we have everybody's number in this entire conference. 89 points, 62 assists. But after the last game in the Western Conference semifinals against the Kings on May 9th, 2001, he has to have surgery for a ruptured spleen.
So what they said, and obviously they can't know, but they were like, yeah, he played that last game with a ruptured spleen. And they were like, yeah, he just said it hurt the exact same as it does right now. The doctors took him in. They were just like, dude, you have to have surgery. And he was just like, no. Like,
no, I'm not hurt. I'm a hockey player, but I'm playing golf today. Unfortunately for him, he misses a fantastic postseason run.
Yep.
And the Avalanche win him another Stanley Cup in 7 games against New Jersey.
Which is awesome. He deserves that second cup because, but just that. I think it was like their, equipment guy who was just like, yeah, he just kept complaining about this pain throughout this whole game. And then they're like, let's go check it out. And he's just like, oh, wow, your spleen is ruptured. Like, it's such a hockey player thing. Just like,
can you put tape on it?
Yeah, no, we'll tape it. No, this for the off season.
It's for the off. Well, this next off season is kind of unfortunate for Peter because
more surgeries.
He takes a leave of absence in January 2002 for a foot issue. Apparently, the peroneal tendons in his left foot were all messed up and needed reconstructive surgery, which is just. Oh, boy.
They said he had an abnormal arch or something.
Yeah.
Which is, I bet, just like compounded with all the skating he did.
Yeah, like, it can't help you.
No.
Does get into 9 games. Does get 9 goals and 18 assists in the playoffs, unfortunately, because he does come back. He
comes back,
season.
He comes back like right when the playoffs start.
They unfortunately lose in the conference finals to Detroit.
Yep.
In 7. That last game was just like the biggest ass whooping I've ever seen. But 2002, 2003, this is when this might be his finest season.
Yes, people are saying this is full health, no spleen, both ankles.
Shoulders. He's got head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
It's got them all, man. And no spleen. You hear we talk about a spleen in that rhyme? No.
Doesn't need it. He's a hockey player. 29 goals, 77 assists for 106 points, which led the league.
Led the league in points, which is...
Wins the Ross Trophy.
Yep.
That year. On the amp line with Alex Tanguay and Milan Hajduk, a couple of younger guys on that second cup-winning team. Wins, actually, not only the Ross Trophy in scoring, he wins the Hart Trophy as the league's MVP.
Yep.
A year removed from only playing in the postseason.
A year removed from something that would happen and retire a lot of guys.
Yeah.
So
or injuries leading up to that, which would retire a lot of guys. They're upset, though, in 7 games by Minnesota in the first round. And this is kind of where we see the end of the Avalanche being a great hockey team. 2003, 2004, he missed 43 games with groin and abdominal injuries.
Yep, we've all been there.
Yes, we have.
But he is, and that's the thing. It's different. Injuries keep popping up. He misses half the season.
Still 55 points in 39 games.
Yep.
So every time he's on the ice, I figure his plus minus is just like always in the plus category. But losing 6 to San Jose in the Western Conference semifinals, and you're thinking, 04-05, he's coming back to Colorado. It's going to be great. Nope, there's another lockout because that's just the way pro sports is.
Yep. So he goes back to Sweden.
Yeah, and guess who's coaching him?
He goes home, and his dad's coaching him, and he's banging the milkmaid. I don't know what goes on.
My wife's off banging the Pepperidge Farm guy.
That's right.
He scored 39 points in 33 games for Modo. Comes back to the Abs in 05-06. But at that point, they just started restructuring and like scuttling everyone as far as higher paid players.
Well, they said they had to make a decision as to are they going to keep Sakic or Forsberg. They decided to keep Sakic.
Well, he's never injured.
Yep.
Also.
Yes. Are they going to keep, and I forgot who it was,
Rob Blake.
Or Adam Foote, and they ended up letting Adam Foote go. So it literally was like that where you were just like, oh, yeah, those kind of do make sense that they just can't have this bloated essentially budget that they really had to come down on. So,
well, the NHL is hemorrhaging money, so they got to restructure the whole salary cap after the lockout.
Yep.
So he says no to a $13.5 million 4-year deal, and he decides to move on. In this season for 2 years, $11.5 more money per year from the Philadelphia Flyers. Yep.
Not a terrible move.
No.
It kind of makes sense. More money. The Flyers aren't that good right now.
No, they're pretty god-awful.
They're pretty god-awful. So that's the other thing that kind of sucks, where you're just kind of like, all right, we'll see how this goes.
And unlike the Pens at this time, who were also god-awful, they're not drafting well like the Pens are.
Yes, exactly.
He has to surgery before the season
again
for a bursa sac on his right ankle, and a groin injury only limits him to. He's like the Hans Moleman of hockey players. He's just groin.
I'm only 30 years old.
Alcohol has ruined my life. Still 75 points in 60 games.
Still 75 points. That's the thing. His plus minus is crazy. I think it got taken a lot down later when he.
Old.
Well, just like his last couple of years where he was spotty playing and just didn't get any points.
Teams.
Yes, at all. But literally in the moments where he was playing all the time, he always had a plus rating on his plus minus. It's almost all assists.
Yeah.
2/3 assists.
It's probably about right. Lose that year to the Sabres in the first round. 06-07. Unfortunately, limited to 40 games because he has to have surgeries on his right ankle to correct deformities from the abnormal arch to stretch his ankle. It's his other foot.
Yep. So they did it to the left one, and then they had to do it to the right one, and now they're... I'm just saying, he had a lot of surgeries. I did see that he became captain of the Flyers that year.
Yeah.
And the Flyers proceeded to have their worst season ever.
Yes, they did.
Which was not his fault.
No.
Not even a little bit.
He had a point. He averaged a point a game that year. This is not his fault.
They were literally just the dregs of the NHL that year.
That year, though, in 06-07, February 15th, he's actually traded to Nashville.
Yep.
For Ryan Parent, Scotty Upshaw, and first and third round picks in the 2007 draft. And in his last game in Colorado that year, first trip back to Denver. And they wanted to make the playoffs and to keep the Avs out, which had to be so
bittersweet.
Yeah.
Because...
Welcome back. Oh, why did you do that?
Yes. And, he's a professional. So he went to...
He's not a professional. He's a fucking professional.
There you go. I forgot the line we were using. He went to Denver. He broke those hearts after he, gave them all that hope, which is such a weird little spider web that he literally the first time going back to Denver, he stops them from going to the playoffs for only the second time in their franchise history.
Yeah, it was just nuts. For most of 2007, 2008, he played for Modo.
Yep, he went back.
He just went back and played, Swedish hockey and said he would only return to one of the 3 teams he had played for. That February, he signs again with the Avalanche. 14 points in 9 games, though.
Well, he's just
a machine.
Point machine.
2008, 2009, again, stays with Modo, plays 3 games. In 2009, 2010, 30 points in 23 games, playing with Marcus Naslund, of all people, which I thought was cool. And then in 2011, 2012, he comes back for one last ride with the Avalanche. Unfortunately, only plays in 2 games and says he's going to retire.
Yep.
Basically said his inability to defend himself on the ice and not play like he used to, which a hell of a career in the NHL in Sweden. But you know what else he did? He was a fucking G for Team Sweden internationally.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about his international.
Because there's a lot to it.
Yeah. And he started early, under 18s.
Euro Juniors in 91 and led the tournament in scoring.
17 goals in 6 games. And somebody said this. They were like, it's juniors. We get it. We're never going to see a record like that ever again.
No.
Because it was just like he was scoring so much.
Following year at the World Juniors, 11 points in 7 games. Sweden won silver. He actually played on the men's team at the 92 Worlds, got a goal and assist, and won a gold medal. The 93 Juniors, now he's, 20 years old. It's not fair. He sets a tournament record with 24 assists and 7 goals to have 31 points.
It's insane.
TSN referred to him as the best junior player ever, and that included people like Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
That's how, like you said, best player who's not in the NHL. And in 1994, we get the Winter Olympics in Norway, and Sweden has a very good hockey team. Forsberg is a very good hockey player. And he basically is a national hero after these Olympics in Sweden for what he does in the important shootout against Canada.
Well, and this is at this point, 94, he is a world champion. He's an Olympic champion. I bet the Flyers at this point were just like, we made a huge mistake.
And I think this is the point right where Lindros might start to be getting those concussions. It's not just a 1-for-1 either. It's, what did we do?
Yes, it's not a 1-for-1. It's a 1-for-7.
God.
And 15 million.
15 million US dollars, which go very far in the Great White North.
Dollars.
We're going to trade them in Canadian. That's like $3, right?
Come on.
Scores on Canadian Corey Hirsch with a one-hand slide-in goal.
Yep.
Very epic, much like the triple deke in the District 5 Junior Goodwill.
It's his. It's almost like his move. You know what I mean? If you watch it, it's very, very. Yeah, he's great on shootouts.
Yeah, so he ends up winning the game in the shootout to win Sweden a gold medal against Canada. And he was so famous, he was used on a postage stamp in Sweden.
Which is awesome.
That's awesome. I mean, that's like better than being the Lego guy. Like
22 milkmaids everywhere.
Oh, yeah. 96 World Cup, they ends up winning bronze. Misses the 97 Karjala Cup because of his foot. He lasted only 1 practice session. No medal in the 98 games, though. Still has 5 points in 4 games, but they win the 98 World Championship.
Yeah, they win 98 Worlds, which is weird to think that they won the 98 Worlds, but no medal in the Olympics.
This is like the decade in Denmark where you're like, they were good at something once?
They were so good. I remember looking at this because they also have a bunch of silvers. They had a silver in the Worlds in 93, and then in 2003 and 2004.
Yeah, it's crazy. Then we get to the 2006 Winter Olympics. He's still playing and playing hurt, and they win their he wins his 2nd gold medal.
2 gold medals, 2 Stanley Cup. I love that.
I mean, it's just amazing. Kind of go over his.
Yeah.
I had a good quote by his former coach, Mark Crawford, though, the Avalanche. He said, he's such an unselfish player. He's one of those players who would rather make a pretty play and feed somebody else for the goal than score himself. I mean, that was just him to a T, but he wouldn't just be the assist guy. He'd get back and back check on defense. I mean...
Well, I feel like his statistics make it look like he's almost like a finesse player. When you actually look at it, you're like, oh, yeah, he was like one of the better defensemen on the...
You put him on penalty kill.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Like, that's what...
Sure, he can
the
score
type of player
shorthanded
he
like
was.
an awesome guy, but... yeah, like... So 249 goals, 636 assists, 885 points, 171 points in the postseason.
Yeah, I love that. He was I'm a step up in the postseason kind of guy.
Rookie of the Year, MVP, won a Ross Trophy. How many guys in NHL history have at least one of those?
Yeah.
I mean...
And he's got 3. Or, I mean, he has 1 of each.
First team All-NHL 3 times, 2 gold medals, 2 world championships, 2 I mean, how many guys have that? In NHL history with almost 900 career points? 0.
Yeah.
Like, one of the best of his era. Could you imagine if he played 80-plus games a season for a nice little window?
If he stayed as healthy as like that 2002-2003 season, I mean, yeah.
Would have been electric, dude. I mean, he was electric.
Yes,
it would
he
have
was.
been just ridiculous. Probably talking minimum 8 Pete there, Colorado. Anyway, Peter Forsberg, everybody.
I don't know if you know this, though. I'm going to throw this one.
Oh, yes, please.
He is an original investor in Crocs. So he is very, very rich now, which I love.
What?
Yep.
That is awesome.
There you go. Peter Forsberg.